Welcome back to news, everyone. I've got a banger episode today. Number one, we have got actual sales numbers-ish for Diablo 4. It's going to be pretty fascinating to get into that. Activision Blizzard have also taken a massive loss. They have had to wipe away debt owed to them by Overwatch League and Call of Duty League teams. Some analysts are actually saying this could be as much as $420 million worth of debt, which is insane. And at least for the Overwatch League, it's like $7.5 million a team. They just have to wipe the debt away. It's absolutely crazy. And then EA have actually somewhat washed their hands of Star Wars: The Old Republic. They're changing how that MMO is being ran, and it's a bit of a shake-up over at BioWare. So, a lot of great stories in today's episode that is powered by our awesome sponsor. As you know, cutting through bullshit is pretty much what we do here, and that's why I've been super happy to partner with ground.news/Bellular. Now, I use Ground News a lot personally, most recently researching what's up with Microsoft, which is pretty relevant given what we cover. And Ground is perfect for this because they bring all the news together in one place, and they give you a quick visual breakdown of the factuality, bias, and source ownership and funding. So you actually know what's going on and through what lens you are seeing the news. You can easily compare headlines between all the different outlets across the political spectrum, and their blind spot feature, it is just sweet. It exists to inform you of things that you may have missed based on your news consumption habits. Because of course, we've all got media blind spots, right? It's really awesome, and I've actually noticed they've got a new beta feature that provides a GPT summary for each story, but it does it for the left, center, and right, so it's even letting you compare on that basis. Now, for me, it just makes being informed about the world so much easier, and with their browser extension, you can take their power anywhere, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, for Microsoft, when I was looking for merger news, I recently saw they're being sued for some data protection stuff regarding, like, kids' data, which is pretty spicy. For me, I set mine to the UK edition, and that's really handy because it just helps me be up to date on what's going on in the UK, the country that I live in, and also it helps me not be misled by the bias. So if I see a whole bunch of buzz around a story, but I see, oh, it's only being covered by like this side, then I know maybe I should do a little bit deeper research. So I love them. You can sign up for unlimited access via my link before the 1st of July, and you can get 30% off their Vantage subscription for as little as $5 a month, which is practically nothing considering the amount of value they provide. It's pretty damn awesome. Check them out. And with that said, let's go. First up, those Diablo numbers. Diablo 4 has become the fastest selling Blizzard game before it's even launched, which is a pretty strange thing. It is, of course, rather indicative of how the business is done these days. This is what they've said. It's their highest pre-launch unit sales ever on console and PC. In the 4 days since early access started on June 1st, it's been played for 93 million hours, over 10,000 years, they say. Now, the thing here is they actually don't give sales figures, but we can do a degree of extrapolation, right? So, World of Warcraft Shadowlands at the time was the fastest launch on PC. It had 3.7 million day one units. Of course, that is the entire pre-order period and day one inclusive. In the case of that game, that was very much because there was a lot of like pre-order bonuses and that kind of thing that players could actually use in the game when it was still Battle for Azeroth, the prior expansion. Diablo 3 actually was 3.5 million units in its first day. Overall then, I think that we're definitely looking at numbers for D4 that are above Shadowlands and D3. Now, they didn't say that it's the fastest selling of all time. I mean, who knows, maybe after the day one numbers are in, they'll be able to say, oh, by the way, we actually beat the numbers that CD Projekt Red posted about Cyberpunk 2077. I would imagine that this is an extreme seller, though, given it's a multi-platform release and an absolutely ginormous brand. Plus, those Diablo 3 sales, those were PC only. Now, that being said, if Diablo 4 isn't that far ahead of Diablo 3, you could see that as a little bit of a loss. But either way, it does seem like this is going to be doing absolutely incredible numbers. And for some reference, by August 2015, Diablo 3 had sold 30 million units. right? So that's the kind of ballpark that we're going to be talking about here. That being said, I think it is worth noting that the Chinese audience is no longer something Blizzard can access. Of course, the NetEase deal expired. Not, of course, for Diablo Immortal, that's like a separate thing, but everything else, that has expired. So Blizzard actually hasn't re-entered the Chinese market. When they do so, I imagine they'll be trying to get better terms. But if they're trying to get better terms, I've also got to imagine that a lot of those large companies they could partner with in China will be thinking, yeah, we've got you over a barrel, Blizzard. You want to get into China. We're the gatekeepers, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Overall, though, we are seeing an absolutely stellar launch. There were a few quibbles. I actually found yesterday I had more quibbles playing D3 than I did during the early access period, which perhaps indicates that launch day surge actually was a little bit impactful. Okay, that's the Diablo news for now. Obviously, we're going to have to wait and see. Blizzard are going to be rolling out 4 seasons a year and likely an expansion every year or two. So that's pretty much the deal there. Next, though, and sticking with Activision Blizzard, we have some very large numbers, right? So get a load of this. As we all know, the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League were a major thing, right? Bobby apparently was like quite personally involved. I mean, hell, he's on the board for Coca-Cola. I think they got that sponsorship for the Overwatch League with Coca-Cola, all that stuff. Anyway, the point is, it was seen as a humongous growth sector. I remember there being a much ridiculed by people inside the industry report about just how large esports could be, that suddenly it's going to be so much larger and bringing so much more money than the NFL and all of that. And it's, of course, quite funny then that you see a lot of that like NFL franchise model be something that they try to emulate here. But this is really rough. They are, to a degree, willing to wipe the slate clean on the Overwatch League and potentially, per sources, the Call of Duty League. Get a load of this. This is from Sports Business Journal. The 12 inaugural teams of the Overwatch League paid approximately $20 million each to join the league. Expansion teams joined the league in 2018, paying a total cost of around $30 to $35 million. Since then, team entry fees were reduced because of the COVID-19 pandemic, so after factoring in fees already paid on schedule, Overwatch League teams still owed anywhere between $6 and $7.5 million. It is that money owed that has been rescinded. And it's also unclear if any of the money the teams did pay will actually be paid back. I saw numbers that were absolutely massive. When you add up the average amount of, 6 and 7 million a team, you multiply that by all the different teams, you're dealing with a hell of a lot of money. And you can see, as it's reported here, franchises in the Overwatch and Call of Duty leagues collectively owe the gaming giant between $390 and $420 million. That's really going to suck. And yeah, a whole bunch of this they're just having to write off, which of course anyone could have told you. There's no way the Overwatch League was able to justify those absolutely crazy numbers. But obviously they want to continue, so they're taking that pragmatic approach where, ultimately, like if these teams, if they fall to pieces, that's really bad for the overall health of the league. And if these teams fall to pieces because Activision Blizzard kills them, because frankly Activision Blizzard is overcharging for what an actual franchise spot in the league is worth, then obviously that would be very bad. And when you look at all this, you can see the franchise model just didn't work. It was a bad value to the team owners, and it just did not really grow the way that they felt it would. It could have been the case that the franchise model may have actually been worth the amount of money and the buy-ins than the ongoing upkeep of a team if Blizzard had have just continued and supported Overwatch 1 properly. But of course, as we saw via that recent reporting, no, Overwatch 1 was never really intended to sort of exist as this big live game the way that I think Blizzard Business and a lot of the fans were actually treating it. No, for them, it was the first stage getting back to their MMO, Project Titan, which obviously is not what was best for the league. And I think you just see many different competing interests sort of pulling in different ways. The final thing then is a lot of the players of this game, they're obviously streaming on Twitch. That's where a lot of the audience is. They're trying to build their communities and I suppose just be a bit more financially viable if they perhaps don't think that the esports side of things is going to be as successful. And the funny thing there is that Activision is actually, per the sources of Dexerto, trying to sell the exclusive rights over to YouTube. If so, that would be kind of funny, but at the end of the day, if Activision Blizzard is going to be writing off this pretty humongous amount of debt, they are clearly going to want to get some money back somehow. And, is it going to be Twitch? Perhaps not, right? I mean, hell, the other funny thing, Twitch just gave a whole bunch of their money to the WWE. No matter what happens, Vince McMahon always wins. That's just the way that it goes. Okay, our next story then. You know the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 PC boycott, right? Way back in the day. And you saw the Steam group. It was the famous screenshot of the Steam group for the people in the boycott. And then on launch night, all their Steam profiles just said, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 in-game. A sort of similar thing has happened again, but it's got quite dramatic. So, remember the War Thunder sort of players union and strike that I talked about a few weeks ago? Well, it's actually got something quite funny going on. Number one, it obviously didn't work. You basically can't tell much of a difference when you see the player numbers for War Thunder, so that's hardly a surprise. But as was spotted by Player Auctions, even the event organizers may actually not been partaking in their own strike. Less than 24 hours in, this was the official organizer server, speaks for itself, and yeah, this is an official organizer streaming the game in Discord, streaming it to their mates. Now, this resulted in leadership stepping down pretty quickly, but then there was actually a whole bunch of conspiracy theories about how Gaijin were, sending packets that would count as a player login, even on people's accounts as a part of a protracted disinformation campaign, which, I mean, given the general success of video game-related boycotts, I don't think it was that. This is, of course, the result that almost all of us did expect to happen anyway. And as for the very controversial things to spark the boycott, they have stepped down from that Gaijin Entertainment themselves, and they're going to be doing a different look at the economy a little bit later on. Next, an interesting highlight that could crack open gaming for a lot of people. So, right, Mac gaming? Nope. Unless you are very lucky and have that Apple Silicon support, like, say, I do for World of Warcraft on Mac. But this is very interesting. Apple has got a game porting toolkit. It's basically an official implementation of Wine that, yes, will support DirectX 12, right? That's what's going on there. And this is very important to say, indie developers means more people will be able to play these games on their laptops. The other thing is, Apple Silicon's extremely powerful. I mean, bang for the buck, it's absolutely cracked. The performance that I get in World of Warcraft and the stability that I get in this M1 Max MacBook, and it's the 14-inch one, so it still, I think, suffers a little bit thermally compared to the 16-inch with the same chip. I get better performance, way better performance than Matt does in World of Warcraft. And he's running a 2080 Ti and a Ryzen that's got, like, all the cores and one of the ones that's really good for gaming. The Apple Silicon stuff is completely insane if it's a native port. So what's then interesting is hobbyists pretty much immediately got Cyberpunk 2077 running on an M1 MacBook within 24 hours, which we can see here on the Mac Gaming subreddit. So this is running now 15 frames per second on a 16 gigabyte M1 MacBook Pro. Now, that's the M1, that is the base M1, like that chip you are getting for like $999, as a part of like the overall laptop that itself isn't positioned for gaming. If you're dealing with an M1 Pro or an M1 Max or, M2 Pro, M2 Max, those are significantly, absurdly more powerful in the graphics front. So that likely means that I could play Cyberpunk 2077 with really good performance on this, on Ultra. That's kind of crazy, right? So, I mean, as an example, here's a benchmark, right? Now, this is Baldur's Gate, which is native to Apple Silicon. On the base M1, 27 frames per second. M1 Pro, 94 frames a second, and clearly it's hitting some sort of headroom there because it's 95 on M1 Max. Then to look at even say, like, this is 1080p medium, which is obviously pretty low, but M1, 32 frames a second, M1 Pro, 60, M1 Max is 112. So, point basically is, anyway, this kind of is the start of just cracking open gaming on Mac. These are extremely high-selling devices, so you could likely then see more people having access to video games here. And hell, if you want a more recent game, here is Diablo 4. This is Diablo 4 on M2 Max, on the latest version of Mac OS, which is what supports all this stuff. And just going into some gameplay here, they are getting a very solid looking 80 to 90 FPS. So anyway, I think that's pretty cool. Likely get better over time in the same way that Linux users get to benefit from Proton, which is awesome, which is why you can play your Windows games on, say, a Steam Deck. It does seem that Mac users will have that. That basically means more games for way more people, and that's a really good thing. The next thing then is we do have EA actually jettisoning SWTOR Yeah, IGN got the scoop here. So, Star Wars Old Republic is not being cancelled. But it's no longer an EA game because it's going over, in terms of operation and management, to Broadsword Online Games, who currently run Ultima Online and Dark Age of Camelot. And funny enough, man, it's so funny seeing Dark Age of Camelot again. Anyway, Broadsword are actually ran by a former BioWare vice president, Rob Denton, who is someone that worked on the Old Republic. They said that their goal is to do what's best for the game and its players. EA will still be the publisher, but the intent allegedly is to allow BioWare to focus its resources on Mass Effect and Dragon Age. But what this does mean is that about half of the current 70 to 80 person development team is going to be moving over to Broadsword, and then any remaining people at EA are going to have to, look for some new internal roles or face layoffs. Ultimately then, I think that this is a little bit more pragmatic. I mean, strategically, it's hard to see SWTOR being a very important game for Electronic Arts right now. It did not blow up, I think, in the way that they hoped. The content cadence for that game has been very slow, and while the likes of the Fallen Empire, whatever it was, that duo of narrative expansions, while they were pretty well received for, like, their narrative bits, like, man, I covered it in another channel, but the latest expansion, its narrative content was like 2 hours long. It was so short, and it just launched in a half-baked state, absolutely full of bugs. It was clear that it just never really got what it needs. The question then, with Broadsword, is that financial arrangement going to be at, the sort of tier where they can afford to make more of this game than EA could? And you might think that sounds insane, but at the end of the day, the thing that Broadsword does is MMOs. If this game wasn't a strategic, necessity for EA, you could probably see management's general interest not really helping the project out. So, look, I think this is pragmatic. I think it's the wise thing to do. It just makes the most sense for the game. Just has to, come down to how will Broadsword do this? Who knows? And then the final thing. Right, update your calendars, everybody, because Key 3 is happening! Yes, E3 is dead, but, Jeff Keighley gobbled it all up anyway. Anyway, here's all the stuff that you need to be aware of. So on the 8th of June, we've got Summer Games Fest. That's the big Jeff Keighley event. Day of the Devs is also then, as is Devolver Direct. Then on Saturday, the 10th of June, we've got the Wholesome Games Showcase, Future Games Show, and OTK Expo. 11th of June, we've got Xbox Games Showcase, which will be followed by the Starfield Direct. That one I'm fascinated about. I think it was Aaron Greenberg replying to people on Twitter. He's at Xbox. Whoever it was at Xbox anyway. They were kind of saying decently bullish things of like, oh no, it's not just going to be a bunch of CG trailers for games that don't have dates. There will be loads of stuff with dates. So, I mean, Xbox are coming from a position of weakness now. They're behind in sales and all that. This absolutely is their time to actually turn up with the goods and show us video games. There's also the PC Gaming Show. That's that day too. And then for the 12th of June, I get to celebrate my birthday with Ubisoft Forward. Shit, what do I do to deserve that? Who knows? Ubisoft may have a few decent things. I mean, Assassin's Creed Mirage, I'm pretty interested in that. And X-Defiant, hey, people are actually saying really positive things about that game, as I talked about a little bit ago. And then finally, the Capcom Showcase. Capcom just keep on blasting out the wins. I forget who it was, but I just saw a great compilation of recent Capcom games, and the amount of high 80s and 90s is just insane. I mean, hey, the new Street Fighter 6, it's got a 20-hour campaign. That's all straight 90s. Super high reviews. Capcom, again, are just... they're not really doing the evil bullshit in a way that's super gratuitous. They're just pumping out loads of goddamn incredible games. So more power to them. Anyhow, that is it for today's episode of The Roundup. Cannot wait to see what those actual Diablo numbers are going to be like. And I think most importantly for me, how that's going to be playing at endgame. Because a D4 that has got the structure of Lost Ark, where it's more of an MMO and seasons don't involve a reset and a new character, I could see myself playing that perhaps like I would play an MMO, but just the fact that it's all that, reset and go again, I really doubt that they're going to have enough stuff to keep me interested in a new season. So really, I'm very skeptical as to the ability of a season to get me interested in continuing to play that game, but absolutely I can say now that I finished the game, I would totally play the next expansion. I mean, the start and the end of D4 go so goddamn hard. The cinematic was really cool. Anyhow, that's it for me. You can check out this video next, or whatever video will eventually blend in and replace my face that you can click on, and I'll see you next time.